second day of the general debate of the United Nations General Assembly 80th session continues this Wednesday. The Ecuador National Police registered 6,020 murders, 24 homicides per day from January to August 2025. And Israel maintains a violent siege against the Sumud flotilla in the last few hours. Its crew reported more than 10 drone attacks. Hello, welcome to From the South. I'm Luis Alberto Matos from the teleSUR studios in Havana, Cuba. We'll begin with the news. In the United States, the first day of debate of the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly concluded in New York City. Let's look at some of the details of the day.
Today, heads of state, government, ministers, and advocates discussed possible solutions to global challenges related to the promotion of peace, security, and sustainable development. Support for the Palestinian people and their struggle against Israeli genocide was expressed by several of the representatives.
Now, I will show you a photo, which is a picture from daily life in Gaza. The first photo, as you see, these are people. These are women with these cups that they are holding in their hands, cups and buckets. Just feel your conscience and answer the following question. Can we possibly have a reasonable reason for this brutality in 2025? But this shameful picture in Gaza has been unfolding and is being repeated every day for 23 months now. And there are 2.5 million Gazans who live in 365 square kilometers. And every day what happens is they are being dragged from one place to another. The healthcare infrastructure of Gaza is completely collapsed. Doctors have been killed or they have disappeared while under custody. Ambulances have been hit. Hospitals targeted and destroyed. Treatment is not possible. Surgery is not possible. It's not possible to find medications. Now, dear friends, now, as Tayyip Erdogan, with a heavy heart, with my heart bleeding here, I am telling you, innocent little ones, just 2 or 3 years old, without hands, arms, or legs, have become, unfortunately, a common sight to see in Gaza.
We have the ultimate responsibility to ensure and protect the rights of the Palestinian people to self-determination, consistent with the case that South Africa brought before the International Court of Justice. There is growing global consensus. There is growing global consensus that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza.
The question is not whether to recognize Palestinian state, but when. The continued unilateral actions by the Israeli governments are unacceptable.
The
most important thing is for Palestine to coexist with Israel in a sustainable state. Japan will continue to take practical and proactive role to realize the two-state solution.
During his intervention in the UN General Assembly, Colombian President Gustavo Petro outlined the United States government attempt to dominate the peoples of the South, behind the justification of waging a war against drug trafficking.
Anti-drug policy is not meant to stop cocaine that is coming to the United States. The anti-drug policy is to dominate the peoples of the South as a whole.
Of course, the President of the United States, as could not be otherwise, instead of reconciling and seeking peace, once again showed the true aggressive face of imperialism.
If you look back just a year ago, it was millions and millions of people pouring in from all over the world, from prisons, from mental institutions, drug dealers. All over the world they came. They just poured into our country with the ridiculous open border policy of the Biden administration. Our message is very simple. If you come illegally into the United States, you're going to jail, or you're going back to where you came from, or perhaps even further than that. You know what that means?
The second day of debates will take place this September 24th, where interventions from Iran, Serbia, Namibia, Nigeria, and other member states are expected. It will be another day of intense discussions, with support for Palestine, calls for multilateralism, and unity expected to remain the main topics among the nations present.
In this context, Colombian President Gustavo Petro has called for a criminal trial against U.S. President Donald Trump and several U.S. officials over the extrajudicial killing of at least 13 civilians in the Caribbean Sea. Speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, Petro condemned recent U.S. military strikes on boats accused of drug trafficking, asserting that the victims were unarmed and not involved in criminal activities. He labeled the attacks as unlawful executions and held Trump responsible for ordering the operations, demanding justice for the victims.
So it's easy to shoot missiles against the speedboats with migrants and accusing them of terrorism and drug trafficking when they don't have a single weapon to defend themselves. When the real drug traffickers live in New York, here, just a few blocks from here, in Miami, and they reach agreements with the DEA.
Now, first break coming up. Remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you'll find news in different formats, news updates, and much more. We're going to be right back. Stay with us. Welcome back. According to data published by the Ecuador National Police from January to August 2025, the country recorded 6,020 murders, representing 24 homicides per day. The official statistics are the result of President Daniel Noboa's administration and represent a 42% increase compared to the first 8 months of 2024. Until now, 2023 was classified as the most violent year in the country, but with President Noboa's plans, the figures have increased dramatically in 2025, setting a record for homicides in Ecuador's recent history. The declaration of internal armed conflict and the increase in value-added tax to 15% did not achieve the goal committed to by the president and has positioned Ecuador as the most violent country in the region. And Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro announced the 4 state powers are analyzing a constitutional decree of foreign commotion in response to threats from the Donald Trump administration. This announcement was made during the State Council meeting, where President Maduro also referred to a set of constitutional and legal measures that will enable the Venezuelan state to respond to any act of aggression. Maduro justified these decisions in light of mounting threats and the false narrative surrounding his country, its people, and its government, which is being promoted by the national far right. The figure analyzed by the state's powers is provided for in Article 388 of the National Constitution. And in Peru, an audio recording involving the Justice Minister and the Prime Minister has created tension within the executive branch, and Congress is already gathering signatures to remove them from office. Our colleague Ramiro Angulo with the details.
La aparición de un nuevo audio en el que el ministro de
The
Justicia
appearance of a new audio recording in which Justice Minister Juan José Santibanez requests the transfer to another prison of a dangerous criminal, whom he was legally advising, has once again called into question his suitability for the position.
Es increíble, pero la economía ilegal que tiene el país.
It is incredible, but the country's illegal economy is based on extortion, kidnapping, drug trafficking, illegal mining, logging, and human trafficking has legal arms through a group of lawyers who are now co-governing with the president. In other words, they have penetrated the institutions, not only the bad police, the bad officers, the bad soldiers, and the high command of the armed forces, but they are also penetrating the executive branch. As the audio says, the families are now going and knocking on the door of the ministry to claim what they have paid for.
El ministerio empieza a reclamar lo que han pagado, ¿no?
En dicho audio, este le pide al entonces ministro de Justicia
In the audio recording, he asks the then Minister of Justice and now Prime Minister Eduardo Arena to favor the convicted former police officer Marcelo Soli Roses, accused of being the armed wing of the Los Pulpos gang, a fact that has led to a motion of censure to remove both from office.
Si es que efectivamente es su voz y si es que
If it is indeed his voice, and if he has made those announcements, if those conversations are real, he could have committed the crime of influence peddling,
para el cual no se exige
for which it is not required that the influence invoked be real. It is sufficient that the invocation of influence be made for the crime to have been committed. Therefore, all that remains to be done here is to conduct an expert analysis of the audio recordings and confirm that it is the voice of Santibanez, in which case he will have committed the crime without a
la
doubt.
voz de Santibáñez, en cuyo caso habrá cometido el delito sin lugar a dudas.
Santibáñez fue censurado como ministro del Interior.
Santibanez was criticized as Minister of the Interior for not combating insecurity, but he also attacks the press, and is under investigation by the prosecutor's office for blocking investigations against Dana Boluarte and her brother Nicanor.
Están negociando también la posibilidad.
They are also negotiating the possibility of an amnesty, I believe, and this is a hypothesis for the President of the Republic with regard to the events of the 2020 and 23rd. It seems to me that they are running out of time. They have 8 months to achieve this amnesty in this Congress, before the new Congress is installed. And thus the President will be able to go home peacefully knowing that she will not be prosecuted for the deaths that occurred during the protests.
Por las muertes que ocurrieron durante las protestas.
Para la ex premier Mirta Vázquez,
For former Prime Minister Mirta Vázquez, Prime Minister Arena's attitude in saying that he does not recognize himself in the audio recording demonstrates his political audacity.
La reacción del involucrado, el señor.
The reaction of the person involved, Mr. Arena, President of the Council of Ministers, seems to me to be extremely cynical and somewhat expressive of political audacity, because he does not deny that it is his voice.
Político, ¿no? Porque él tampoco niega que sea su voz, no niega el contenido de la.
He does not deny the content of the conversations, he simply says that it is up to the judiciary to determine that a prime minister is the highest authority. This is really scandalous and serious, but I believe he has this reaction because he feels impunity and protection.
Creo que tiene esa reacción porque se sabe impune y protegido, ¿no?
para los entrevistados, las más de 30 firmas en la censura contra
For
Santibáñez.
those interviewed, the more than 30 signatures on the censorship against Santibáñez demonstrate the delicacy of the case, and although they feel protected, it is difficult to predict whether any of them will be removed next week after the debate.
Desde Lima, para Telesur, Ramiro Angulo Maquiavelo.
In Mexico, a grassroots organization in a rural area of Mexico City managed to change the fate of a community center that was supposed to be built into a sports facility. After a consultation, the vote was no. Why? Our colleague Daniel Rosa with the story.
Las instalaciones del Deportivo Xochimilco,
The facilities of the Xochimilco Sports Center, south of the Mexican capital, will remain as they are now, following the struggle of indigenous peoples against a local government project. At this baseball field, we met Esmeralda, who gave us an overview of what happened.
Son gente de lucha que defiende.
They are fighters who defend their spaces and their territory. Here, things are still run by traditional authorities, and in the end, there are many laws that protect us as indigenous neighborhoods and peoples at the international level.
Pueblos y barrios originarios a nivel internacional.
se planteó construir un centro
A
comunitario.
community center with various services and facilities was proposed, but according to the neighbors, these already exist.
El proyecto pensaba hacer lo
The
que ya
project was
está.
planned to do what is already there, just like the pool we already have in this same sports center, but sacrificing all this green space that is actually used. These are spaces that are used not only for baseball, but also for people who go
No
running.
solo para el béisbol, sino también para gente que anda corriendo.
No están en contra del desarrollo.
They are
sino
not
del
against
uso
development,
de la
but
mala
against the misuse of resources, which can lead to acts of corruption, Pilar assures.
Nunca estuvimos en contra del proyecto.
We were never against the project, we simply wanted it to be relocated because the sports center is actually used. It is not a reclaimed space, and it is a space that represents culture, recreation, and sports for the people of Xochimilco.
Esparcimiento, deporte para el pueblo de Xochimilco.
Las protestas crecieron cuando se
The
enteraron
protests grew when they learned that an artificial lake was to be built, even though the sports complex is located just 5 minutes away from the natural Chinampas site, which have been declared a World Heritage Site by UNESCO.
Lo único que se pretendía
The
era
only intention was to make it touristic, for a kind of fly-by tourism, so to speak, because the World Cup is coming. Xochimilco is less than 15 kilometers from the Azteca Stadium and will receive a lot of tourists, but what will happen after the World Cup is
Pero
over?
¿qué va a pasar después de que pase el mundial?
La razón de la oposición tan fuerte.
The reason for the strong opposition from the neighbors is that these lands belong to the indigenous communities, who donated them so that facilities could be built for the good of the community.
El gobierno de la capital aceptó que
The capital city government agreed that the outcome was favorable to the residents.
Y algunas consultas se ganan,
And
otras
some elections are won, and others are lost, and we will respect the will of the people and seek other opportunities.
y se buscarán otros espacios.
La población de Xochimilco espera que
The people of Xochimilco are waiting for the decision to be made official, so they can have complete peace of mind.
Con las imágenes de Javier Hernández, Daniel Rosas, TeleSUR, Ciudad de México.
We now have our second break coming up. We invite you to visit our Facebook page at teleSUR English. There you'll be able to watch our top stories, special live coverage, and much more. Follow our page and activate the notification button to stay up to date on the world's most recent events. A final break. Don't go away. Welcome back. Israel maintains a violent siege against the Sumud flotilla. In the last few hours, its crew reported more than 10 drone attacks. In response to the serious risk to the fleet crew, they have requested that the United Nations General Assembly discuss the issue and appoint an escort observers in addition to unmanned drone harassment that the flotilla reports on identified launches, communications, interference, and explosions heard from several ships. The flotilla rejected the pressure by Israel to unload humanitarian aid in the port of Ascalon, for which they received serious threats that have begun to materialize. The crew have asked their governments to demand that Israel respects their life and physical integrity. They assure that the flotilla will not return until it reaches Gaza.
Much like seasickness, but you cannot move.
It is important to highlight that on Tuesday, the Israeli regime threatened to block the global Sumud flotilla after the fleet refused to dock and unload the aid it is carrying to the coastal enclave. In this context, the Israeli Foreign Ministry announced it would prevent the fleet from reaching Palestinian territory after the flotilla dismissed the regime's request to berth at the port of Ashkelon and unload its cargo. The flotilla's organizers, however, stated that the regime's demand is part of its ongoing near-total siege of the territory. They added that the regime's record of intercepting vessels, blocking convoys, and restricting routes demonstrates that its intent is not to facilitate relief, but rather to control, delay, and deny it. The new attack by the Zionist regime of Israeli forces thousands of Palestinian families to flee with none or very few of their belongings. The displaced people walked several kilometers with their holdings in an endless caravan of objects to reach the central and southern areas of the coastal strip, amid relentless attacks and bombings in the city of Gaza. According to United Nations aid groups, the genocidal military operation Gideon Chariots aimed at attacking the city of Gaza has displaced more than 300,000 people, while around 700,000 remain encamped in the Palestinian enclave. Since the beginning of Netanyahu's army's ethnic cleansing campaign, there has been an exponential increase in famine, malnutrition, disease, and 65,832 Palestinians have been killed, most of them women and children. And Typhoon Ragasa, one of the most powerful storms of the year, wreaked havoc in Asia. It left 14 people dead and 124 missing in Taiwan. The storm battered Hong Kong with hurricane-force winds reaching up to 230 kilometers per hour and heavy rains uprooting trees and toppling bus stops. Heavy rains and landslides in Taiwan caused a lake in Hualien County to overflow, resulting in at least a dozen deaths. Rescuers are continuing to search for over 100 missing people. Meanwhile, Hong Kong and Macau have issued the highest hurricane warning and closed schools, businesses, and public transportation. Authorities in Guangdong province have evacuated over 1 million people and relocated more than 10,000 vessels. The National Weather Service of Mexico reported that Tropical Storm Narda turned into a Category 1 hurricane. Currently, the storm is moving toward the west of the country at 20 kilometers per hour with maximum sustained winds and strong rains. Authorities warned that the rains could be followed by thunderstorms and hailstones, which could cause landslides and flooding in vulnerable areas. During the current season, up to 20 hurricanes are expected to form in the Pacific, of which between 4 and 6 could reach higher categories. And also it is worth noting that to date, 12 storms have already been recorded in the region. The topics in Thailand, a massive sinkhole roughly 30 by 30 meters wide and about 50 meters deep opened on Wednesday morning near Vajira Hospital in Bangkok's Dusit district, forcing evacuations and road closures. The collapse occurred around 7:15 a.m. local time on Samsen Road, spanning the entire width of the road and swallowing vehicles, electricity poles, and a forklift truck from the nearby police station. Authorities evacuated patients from the hospital and residents from surrounding homes as a safety precaution. Traffic has been closed from Vajira to Changi intersections due to risk posed by the sinkhole, which continues to expand. And like this, we have come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. So join us on social media, Facebook, X, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. TeleSUR English, I'm Luis Alberto Matos. Thank you for watching.